My name is Isabella Martinez, and at 32 years old, I thought I knew what family betrayal looked like. I had weathered my sister's jealousy through my wedding, her passive-aggressive comments during my pregnancy announcements, and her constant need to make every family gathering about herself. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what happened on that sweltering August afternoon when I found my 18-month-old daughter Sophia unconscious in a locked car, while my sister Carmen stood inside my house, laughing and opening presents at my gender reveal party. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The thermometer that day read 97 degrees. Inside that Honda Civic, experts later estimated the temperature had reached 132 degrees. My daughter had been in there for 43 minutes while Carmen mingled with our guests, accepting congratulations for helping organize the party, playing the role of the devoted aunt while my baby fought for her life 20 feet away in the driveway. When I think back to that moment, bursting through the front door with Sophia's limp body in my arms, screaming for my husband Marcus to call an ambulance, I remember the way Carmen's face changed. Not shock, not horror, but annoyance. Annoyance that I was ruining her perfectly planned party. That was the moment I realized my sister wasn't just selfish or competitive. She was dangerous. Marcus, my husband of 4 years and the police chief of our small Colorado town of Millbrook, had seen domestic violence cases, child endangerment situations, and family conflicts that turned deadly. But even his professional experience hadn't prepared him for the reality that the threat to our family was sitting at our kitchen table, wearing a floral dress, and carrying a diaper bag like she cared about our children. The events of that day shattered more than just my relationship with Carmen. They exposed a pattern of manipulation and narcissistic behavior that had been building for years, carefully hidden behind the facade of sisterly love and family loyalty. Carmen had always been the dramatic one, the one who needed to be the center of attention, but I had excused her behavior as immaturity, a sibling rivalry that would eventually fade as we both grew older and started our own families. I was wrong, dead wrong, and my daughter nearly paid the price for my willful blindness. Sophia survived, thanks to the quick response of Millbrook's volunteer EMT team and the fact that Marcus had insisted on keeping emergency medical supplies in our garage after becoming police chief. The paramedics said another 10 minutes in that heat might have caused permanent brain damage or worse. As I sat in the emergency room holding my daughter's small hand while IV fluids worked to rehydrate her tiny body, I made a decision that would fracture my family forever. Carmen wasn't just careless. She hadn't simply forgotten. The evidence would later prove that she had deliberately left Sophia in that car, knowing exactly what the consequences could be. And my husband, with his badge and his oath to protect and serve, was about to make sure she faced every single one of them. The weeks that followed would reveal a web of jealousy, resentment, and calculated cruelty that stretched back years. Text messages Carmen thought she had deleted. Conversations with mutual friends, where she had expressed her belief that I didn't deserve my perfect life. Comments about how Marcus and I thought we were better than everyone else because of his position in the community and my success as a pediatric nurse. But that August afternoon, as I sat in our living room surrounded by blue and pink decorations, gender reveal confetti still scattered across the hardwood floors, and gifts for our unborn son stacked on the coffee table, all I could think about was how close I had come to losing everything. How my sister's jealousy had nearly killed my daughter. How the woman I had trusted with my children's lives had used that trust as a weapon against us. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was a pediatric nurse who spent my days protecting other people's children from harm, and I had failed to protect my own daughter from the person who should have loved her most after Marcus and me. Carmen had been Sophia's godmother, the person we had chosen to care for our children if anything ever happened to us. She had a key to our house, knew our routines, and had been planning this gender reveal party for weeks. The party had been Carmen's idea. She had insisted on organizing everything, from the decorations to the catering to the timing. She had arrived early that morning with presents and flowers, playing the perfect sister and aunt. She had volunteered to watch Sophia during the reveal ceremony, saying she wanted me to be able to focus on the moment without worrying about chasing a toddler around the yard. I was grateful, touched even, that Carmen seemed to finally be stepping into the role of supportive sister that I had always hoped she would embrace. When she offered to take Sophia inside for a diaper change and a snack, while our friends and family gathered in the backyard for the big reveal, I hadn't thought twice about it. Carmen had babysat Sophia dozens of times before. She knew her routine, her favorite snacks, her nap schedule. What I didn't know was that Carmen had spent months planning this moment, not the gender reveal party, but the opportunity to hurt me in the most devastating way possible. She had researched how quickly cars heat up in summer weather. She had timed her arrival to coincide with the peak heat of the day. She had even made sure to park her car in direct sunlight, away from the shade of our large oak tree where guests typically parked. The party was supposed to be a celebration. Marcus and I had struggled with infertility for 3 years before Sophia was born. And this second pregnancy had been an unexpected blessing. We had decided to wait until 20 weeks to find out the gender, wanting to share the moment with our closest friends and family. Carmen had suggested the party format, complete with a photographer and elaborate decorations. She had seemed genuinely excited about becoming an aunt again. As the guests gathered in our backyard, passing around glasses of lemonade and iced tea, taking photos with the he or she signs Carmen had ordered online, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Marcus stood beside me, his hand on my growing belly, talking with his colleagues from the police department about our plans to convert the spare bedroom into a nursery. Sophia was safely inside with Carmen, probably having her afternoon snack and getting her diaper changed before the excitement began. The photographer Carmen had hired and positioned everyone for the reveal shot. Marcus and I stood in the center of the group, holding the black balloon that would release either pink or blue confetti when we popped it. Our parents flanked us, beaming with anticipation. Friends and neighbors formed a semicircle around us, phones and cameras ready to capture the moment. On the count of 3, the photographer called out, 1, 2, 3. The balloon popped, releasing a shower of blue confetti that sparkled in the afternoon sunlight. Cheers erupted from our guests as Marcus lifted me off my feet in a celebratory hug. We were having a boy. Sophia was going to have a little brother. The moment was perfect, exactly what we had dreamed it would be. It was then that I realized I hadn't seen Carmen or Sophia for over 30 minutes. The diaper change should have taken 5 minutes at most. Even if Sophia had been fussy or hungry, Carmen should have brought her back outside by now. She would want to be part of the celebration, to see the reveal and take pictures with the family. A cold knot of worry began forming in my stomach as I scanned the faces of our guests, looking for Carmen's familiar figure. She wasn't among the people congratulating us, wasn't in the group taking photos by the dessert table, wasn't anywhere to be seen in our backyard. "Marcus," I said, tugging on his uniform sleeve, "have you seen Carmen? Or Sophia?" Growing up in Denver with Carmen was like living with a beautiful storm that could turn destructive without warning. She was 3 years younger than me, born when I was just starting to understand what it meant to be a big sister. Our parents, Maria and Roberto Valdez, owned a small but successful landscaping business that kept them working long hours during the spring and summer months. Carmen and I spent countless afternoons at our grandmother's house, where Abuela Rosa would feed us fresh tortillas and listen to our school stories while our parents finished their workday. From the beginning, Carmen commanded attention in ways I never could. She was the baby with the infectious laugh who could charm strangers in grocery store lines. She had thick, dark curls that bounced when she walked, and enormous brown eyes that made adults melt when she turned on her smile. I was the serious older sister, the one who reminded Carmen to brush her teeth and helped her with homework, the one who cleaned up her messes without being asked. Our parents loved us both. But Carmen's needs always seemed more urgent, more dramatic, more deserving of immediate attention. When she cried, everyone stopped what they were doing. When I cried, I was told to use my words and explain what was wrong. Carmen's scraped knees required elaborate bandaging ceremonies, with special princess bandages and kisses. My injuries were cleaned quickly and dismissed with a reminder to be more careful next time. The pattern followed us through elementary school. Carmen was the star of every school play, the child whose artwork got displayed in the hallway, the one teachers remembered years later when they saw our parents at community events. I was the reliable student who turned in assignments on time and helped other kids with their reading, but I was rarely the one who stood out. It wasn't that Carmen was particularly talented or gifted. She was average in most subjects, struggled with math, and had to repeat second-grade reading. But she had an innate understanding of how to make people notice her, how to position herself at the center of every situation. She would volunteer to be the line leader, raise her hand first even when she didn't know the answer, and always find a way to insert herself into conversations between adults. By middle school, the dynamic had solidified into something that felt normal but never quite comfortable. Carmen was the social butterfly who knew everyone's business and somehow always ended up with the lead in the school musical or the captain position on teams, despite not being the most skilled player. I was the student council treasurer, the peer tutor, the girl who organized the charity drives and managed the logistics that made Carmen's starring roles possible. High school brought new challenges as Carmen's need for attention evolved into more complex manipulations. She would create drama between friend groups, spreading carefully crafted rumors that positioned her as either the victim or the hero of every situation. She dated my crushes, not because she particularly liked them, but because she couldn't stand the idea of me having something she didn't. When I was accepted to nursing school with a partial scholarship, Carmen suddenly decided she wanted to be a nurse too, despite having shown no previous interest in healthcare. She lasted exactly one semester in the nursing program before switching to communications, claiming the medical coursework was too depressing and she wanted to do something more creative with her life. But for those few months, she made sure everyone knew she was following in her big sister's footsteps, painting herself as the supportive younger sibling, rather than acknowledging that she had applied to the same program purely to compete with me. The worst part wasn't Carmen's constant need to outshine me, it was the way she had learned to weaponize our family's love and concern. When our parents questioned her choices or set boundaries, she would disappear for days, sending cryptic text messages about how nobody understood her or cared about her happiness. She would surface at our grandmother's house or a friend's apartment, looking fragile and wounded, spinning elaborate stories about feeling rejected and unloved. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Our parents would panic, calling everyone they knew to find her, canceling work commitments to drive around Denver looking for their missing daughter. I would be expected to help with the search, to call Carmen's friends, and check social media for clues about her whereabouts. When she finally returned home, there would be tearful reunions and promises to do better, to be more understanding of Carmen's sensitive nature. I learned early to navigate around Carmen's emotional explosions, to anticipate her moods and adjust my own behavior to avoid triggering her need for dramatic scenes. Family dinners became exercises in careful conversation, avoiding topics that might make Carmen feel excluded or criticized. Holiday celebrations required elaborate planning to ensure Carmen felt special and included, even when the event was supposed to be celebrating someone else's achievement. When I graduated nursing school and got my first job at Denver Children's Hospital, Carmen was in the middle of another personal crisis involving a boyfriend who had cheated on her with her roommate. My graduation party became a therapeutic intervention for Carmen's broken heart, with relatives spending more time consoling her than congratulating me on landing a position in one of the most competitive pediatric programs in Colorado. I met Marcus during my second year at the hospital. He had brought in a 7-year-old boy who had been injured during a domestic violence call. And something about his gentle demeanor with the frightened child caught my attention. He stayed with the boy until social services arrived, reading him picture books from the waiting room and making sure he wasn't alone while the medical team treated his injuries. Marcus was everything Carmen typically went for in men: tall, handsome, with the kind of confident presence that commanded respect in any room. But he was also quiet, thoughtful, and genuinely interested in building something real rather than just having fun. When I introduced him to my family 6 months later, I watched Carmen assess him with the calculating look I knew meant trouble. She flirted shamelessly during that first family dinner, touching his arm when she laughed at his stories, and finding excuses to sit close to him during coffee and dessert. She asked pointed questions about police work, expressing fascination with the danger and excitement of his job. When Marcus remained politely distant, focusing his attention on conversations with our parents and treating Carmen with the same courteous friendliness he showed everyone else, I saw her jaw tighten in frustration. The next few months brought a campaign designed to undermine our relationship. Carmen would call me with urgent crises that required immediate attention, always timed to coincide with dates Marcus and I had planned. She would show up at my apartment, unannounced when she knew he was visiting, creating dramatic scenes that forced him to witness her emotional volatility. She spread subtle doubts about his suitability as a long-term partner, questioning whether someone in such a dangerous profession could really commit to family life. When Marcus proposed, Carmen's reaction was telling. She congratulated us with tears in her eyes, claiming to be overwhelmed with happiness for her big sister. But within hours, she had called our mother to express concerns about whether I was really ready for marriage, whether I had thought through the challenges of being married to a police officer, whether Marcus was pressuring me into a commitment I might later regret. The wedding planning process became a minefield of Carmen's opinions and suggestions. She volunteered to help with everything, then proceeded to criticize every choice Marcus and I made. The venue was too traditional, the flowers were too simple, the menu was too safe. She had better ideas for everything, all of which conveniently positioned her as more visible and important in the ceremony. 3 weeks before the wedding, Carmen announced she was pregnant. The timing was suspicious, given that she had broken up with her boyfriend 2 months earlier and had been dating someone new for only a few weeks. But the pregnancy became the family's primary focus, with worried discussions about Carmen's financial situation and emotional readiness for motherhood overshadowing the final wedding preparations. Carmen miscarried at 8 weeks, just days after our honeymoon. The loss was real and devastating, and I genuinely grieved with her, putting aside my suspicions about the timing to support my sister through a genuinely difficult experience. But even her grief became a performance, with Carmen positioning herself as uniquely tragic and requiring constant care and attention from everyone around her. When Marcus and I struggled with infertility for 3 years, Carmen was the first person to suggest that maybe we weren't meant to be parents, that perhaps we should consider focusing on our careers instead of forcing something that wasn't happening naturally. When we finally conceived Sophia after our second round of fertility treatments, Carmen's congratulations felt hollow, accompanied by comments about how expensive fertility treatments were and whether we had really thought through the financial implications of parenthood. Through it all, I kept hoping Carmen would grow out of her need to compete with me, that motherhood or a serious relationship or career success would give her the confidence to celebrate other people's happiness without feeling diminished by it. I wanted to believe that the sister who had held my hand during thunderstorms and shared her Halloween candy with me was still there, buried beneath years of learned manipulation and attention-seeking behavior. Looking back now, I realize I was giving Carmen credit for emotions she had never actually demonstrated. I was projecting my own capacity for genuine love and concern onto someone who viewed family relationships as zero-sum competitions, where someone had to lose for her to win. When Marcus was promoted to police chief of Millbrook at just 34, we made the decision to leave Denver behind and start fresh in the small mountain town 2 hours west of the city. The move represented everything we had worked toward: Marcus's career advancement, my opportunity to lead the pediatric unit at Millbrook General Hospital, and most importantly, a chance to raise our family away from the constant drama that seemed to follow Carmen wherever she went. The transition wasn't easy. Millbrook had a population of just 8,000 people, and everyone knew everyone else's business. As the new police chief's wife and the head pediatric nurse at the only hospital, Marcus and I were suddenly public figures in a way we had never experienced in Denver. Our grocery shopping trips became community meetings. Our dinner choices at local restaurants were noted and discussed. Our parenting decisions were observed and evaluated by neighbors who had strong opinions about how the police chief's family should behave. I threw myself into my new role with the determination that had carried me through nursing school and fertility treatments. The pediatric unit at Millbrook General was understaffed and under-equipped when I arrived, a small department that primarily handled routine checkups and minor emergencies, before transferring serious cases to larger hospitals in Denver or Colorado Springs. Within 6 months, I had written grant proposals that brought in new equipment, established protocols for handling complex pediatric emergencies, and created partnerships with specialists who would provide remote consultations for cases we couldn't transfer immediately. The work was demanding, but deeply satisfying. I was building something meaningful, creating a safety net for children in our rural community who had previously faced hours-long ambulance rides for medical care that should have been available locally. The families I served trusted me with their most precious possessions, and I took that responsibility seriously. Staying late to comfort frightened parents and driving to the hospital during snowstorms when emergencies couldn't wait for better weather. Marcus faced his own challenges as he worked to modernize the Millbrook Police Department and build trust with a community that had become skeptical of law enforcement after years of leadership by his predecessor, a man whose idea of policing involved intimidation and favoritism. Marcus implemented new training programs, established community outreach initiatives, and personally responded to every domestic violence call to ensure victims received the support and protection they deserved. Our first year in Millbrook tested our marriage in ways we hadn't anticipated. The pressure of our new roles, combined with the isolation of small-town life and the ongoing stress of trying to conceive, created tensions that required constant communication and compromise to navigate. We attended counseling sessions via video calls with a therapist in Denver, learned to set boundaries between our professional and personal lives, and gradually built a support network of friends who valued us for who we were rather than the positions we held. When Sophia was finally born after our second round of IVF treatments, the relief and joy were overwhelming. She was perfect. 8 pounds, 2 ounces of healthy baby girl with Marcus's dark eyes and my stubborn chin. The pediatric team I had trained delivered her, and the entire hospital celebrated with us as if she were their own grandchild. Millbrook had embraced us as family, and Sophia's birth felt like a community-wide blessing. Carmen's reaction to becoming an aunt was complex and revealing. She drove up from Denver the day after Sophia was born, arriving with an enormous teddy bear and a diaper bag full of expensive baby clothes. She took hundreds of photos, posted constantly on social media about her beautiful niece, and positioned herself as the devoted aunt who would spoil Sophia rotten. But beneath the performance, I sensed the familiar undercurrent of competition and resentment. She made comments about how easy our life in Millbrook seemed compared to her struggles in Denver, where she was working as a marketing coordinator for a small advertising firm and dating a series of men who never seemed to meet her standards. She questioned whether small-town life was really the best environment for raising children, suggesting that Sophia would be culturally deprived without access to museums and cultural events. She worried aloud about whether the local schools would adequately prepare Sophia for college and career success. Despite these concerns, Carmen quickly established herself as Sophia's favorite babysitter. She would drive up from Denver every few weeks, staying for long weekends and helping with household tasks, while Marcus and I caught up on sleep and adult conversation. She seemed genuinely invested in Sophia's development, reading parenting books and researching age-appropriate activities. She bought educational toys and created elaborate sensory play experiences that delighted Sophia and impressed our friends. Marcus remained cautious about Carmen's involvement in our lives, though he was careful never to criticize her directly. He would make subtle observations about her need to document every moment of her visits on social media, her tendency to override our parenting decisions when she thought she knew better, and her habit of creating unnecessary drama around minor issues. When I defended Carmen, pointing out how much she seemed to love Sophia and how helpful her visits had become, Marcus would simply nod and remind me to trust my instincts. The truth was, I was grateful for Carmen's help and support during those early months of motherhood. Pediatric nursing had prepared me for many aspects of infant care, but the sleep deprivation and constant responsibility of caring for my own child were overwhelming in ways I hadn't anticipated. Carmen's enthusiastic involvement allowed me to return to work with confidence that Sophia was in loving hands, and her genuine delight in Sophia's milestones made me hopeful that motherhood might finally give Carmen the sense of purpose and fulfillment she had always seemed to be seeking. As Sophia grew from infant to toddler, Carmen's visits became more frequent and longer. She would arrive on Friday evenings and stay through Sunday afternoons, establishing routines and relationships that made her feel more like a second mother than an occasional babysitter. She knew Sophia's favorite foods, her nap schedule, and the songs that would calm her during fussy periods. She bought duplicate sets of toys and clothes to keep at her apartment in Denver, creating a space where Sophia could stay overnight when Marcus and I needed time alone. The overnight visits were Carmen's idea, presented as a way to give Marcus and me opportunities for date nights and romantic getaways. Sophia loved staying with Aunt Carmen, who let her stay up past her bedtime and eat ice cream for breakfast. Carmen would send constant updates with photos and videos, documenting their adventures at parks and children's museums. She seemed to thrive on being the fun aunt who could spoil Sophia without worrying about long-term consequences. Looking back, I can see how Carmen was gradually positioning herself as indispensable to our family life. She learned our schedules and routines, memorized our emergency contacts and medical information, and established herself as the person we turned to when we needed reliable childcare. She had keys to our house, knew where we kept important documents, and had earned the trust that would eventually allow her to volunteer for organizing the gender reveal party. The pregnancy with our second child brought new challenges and opportunities for Carmen to demonstrate her value as a family member. She drove up from Denver for every major appointment, helped me prepare Sophia for becoming a big sister, and threw herself into planning celebrations for each milestone. She seemed genuinely excited about expanding her role as aunt and insisted on being involved in every decision about the baby's nursery, name selection, and birth plan. When we decided to have a gender reveal party, Carmen immediately volunteered to organize the entire event. She had been researching party planning ideas for months, creating Pinterest boards, and consulting with event coordinators in Denver about themes and decorations. She wanted to create something special for our family, something that would become a treasured memory for years to come. Marcus and I were touched by her enthusiasm and grateful for her willingness to handle the logistics. Planning a party while managing a toddler and a demanding work schedule seemed overwhelming, and Carmen's offer felt like the perfect solution. She assured us that she had everything under control, that all we needed to do was show up and enjoy the celebration with our friends and family. The weeks leading up to the party were filled with Carmen's excited updates about decorations she had ordered, catering arrangements she had made, and special touches she was planning to make the event memorable. She seemed more invested in the party than Marcus and I were, but her enthusiasm was infectious and her attention to detail impressive. She had thought of everything from backup plans for weather to special activities for the children who would be attending. 3 days before the party, Carmen arrived in Millbrook, with her car packed full of decorations and supplies. She spent Friday evening transforming our backyard into a gender reveal wonderland, hanging streamers and balloons, setting up photo stations, and arranging tables for food and gifts. She worked late into the night, determined to create the perfect setting for our announcement. Saturday morning she was up early, putting finishing touches on the decorations and preparing the special balloon that would reveal our baby's gender. She had coordinated with the photographer, confirmed the catering delivery, and created a detailed timeline for the day's events. Everything was perfect, exactly as she had promised it would be. As our guests began arriving that afternoon, Carmen was in her element, greeting everyone with enthusiasm and directing them to the refreshment tables and photo opportunities she had created. She was wearing a new dress bought specifically for the occasion, her hair and makeup perfect for the photos she knew would document the day. She looked like the proud aunt and devoted sister she had always claimed to be. "She's probably just taking a longer nap," Marcus said, but I could hear the edge of concern creeping into his voice as he scanned the crowd of guests still celebrating in our backyard. "You know how Carmen gets when she's hosting something. She probably lost track of time getting Sophia settled down." But my maternal instincts were screaming that something was wrong. Sophia never napped this late in the day, and even if she had been tired, Carmen knew our routine well enough to bring her back outside for the reveal. Carmen thrived on being photographed at family events, on being seen as the devoted aunt who helped make special moments possible. It made no sense that she would miss the actual gender announcement. I pushed through the clusters of guests who were still admiring the blue confetti scattered across our deck, their laughter and congratulations feeling distant and muted as my anxiety spiked. Marcus followed behind me, his police chief instincts kicking in as he began to assess the situation with the same methodical approach he used at crime scenes. "Carmen?" I called out as we entered the house through the sliding glass door. The air conditioning hit us like a wall after the oppressive heat outside, and I realized how sweltering the afternoon had become. The kitchen was empty except for the catering dishes Carmen had arranged on the counter, the food sitting untouched, since most guests had been too focused on the reveal ceremony to eat. See if has Tashent. Carmen? Sophia? I called again, louder this time, moving toward the staircase that led to the bedrooms. My voice echoed through the house, but no response came back. Marcus was already checking the downstairs bathroom and the nursery we had set up for the new baby, his movements quick and efficient. The silence felt oppressive, wrong in a way that made my chest tighten with panic. Our house wasn't large enough for Carmen and Sophia to be anywhere I couldn't hear them. If Sophia was napping, I would hear the white noise machine we always used. If Carmen was changing a diaper or dealing with a toddler meltdown, there would be sounds of activity, conversation, the normal chaos that accompanied caring for an 18-month-old. I took the stairs two at a time, checking our bedroom, the guest room where Carmen stayed during her visits, and finally Sophia's room at the end of the hallway. Each room was empty, showing no signs that Carmen and Sophia had been there recently. Sophia's diaper bag was gone from its usual spot by the changing table, and her favorite stuffed elephant was missing from the crib. Isabella! Marcus's voice carried an urgency that made my blood freeze. He was calling from downstairs, near the front of the house, his tone sharp with the authority he used when commanding attention during emergencies. I ran back down the stairs, my heart hammering against my ribs as worst-case scenarios flashed through my mind. Marcus was standing in the front hallway, staring out the window beside our front door, his face pale beneath his summer tan. "Where's Carmen's car?" he asked, his voice tight with control. I looked past him through the window, scanning our driveway and the street beyond. Carmen's silver Honda Civic was gone. The space where she had parked that morning, directly in the sun because she had arrived before most of our guests, was empty except for oil stains on the asphalt. "She left," I whispered, the words feeling surreal as they left my mouth. "She took Sophia and left without telling us." Marcus was already pulling out his phone, his fingers moving rapidly across the screen as he called Carmen's number. We could hear it ringing through the speaker, once, twice, 3 times before going to voicemail. "Carmen, this is Marcus. Call me back immediately. We need to know where you are with Sophia." His voice was calm but carried the unmistakable tone of a police officer giving an order rather than making a request. Through the window I could see our guests in the backyard, still laughing and taking photos, completely unaware that anything was wrong. The photographer Carmen had hired was documenting the celebration, capturing moments that were supposed to become treasured family memories. The irony of the scene felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. "Maybe she ran out to get something for the party," I said, grasping for rational explanations even as my instincts told me this was something else entirely. Ice or more drinks or decorations she forgot. But even as I spoke the words, I knew they didn't make sense. Carmen had spent weeks planning every detail of this party. She had arrived that morning with lists and schedules, double-checking supplies and arrangements like a military operation. She wouldn't have forgotten anything important enough to require an emergency trip to town during the middle of the event. Marcus was scrolling through his contacts, calling the Millbrook Police Department dispatch. "This is Chief Martinez. I need you to put out a bolo for a silver Honda Civic Colorado plates." He paused, realizing he didn't know Carmen's license plate number by heart. "Never mind the plates for now. I need you to check with local businesses, see if anyone's seen my sister-in-law Carmen Valdez in the last hour. She's got my 18-month-old daughter with her." The word "missing" hung unspoken in the air between us, but its presence was as real as the heat radiating through our front windows. Marcus ended the call and immediately tried Carmen's number again, this time leaving a more urgent message. "Carmen, this is your second call. You need to contact us right now. Our guests are asking about Sophia, and we need to know where you are. This isn't like you to leave without saying anything." But as the words left his mouth, we both realized that this was exactly like Carmen. The dramatic exits, the mysterious disappearances, the need to create chaos and confusion around events that weren't supposed to be about her. How many times had she pulled similar stunts during family gatherings, birthday parties, and holidays? The difference was that this time, she had taken our daughter with her. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed my car keys from the hook by the garage door, my mind racing through possible destinations. The grocery store in town, the gas station, the small strip mall where Carmen sometimes bought coffee during her visits. She couldn't have gone far in the 30 or 40 minutes since I had last seen her. "I'm going to drive around town and look for her car," I told Marcus, already heading toward the garage. "No," his voice stopped me cold. "We do this systematically. I'm calling for backup, and we're going to canvass every business in Millbrook. You stay here in case she comes back or calls the house phone." The next 20 minutes felt like hours. Marcus coordinated with his officers while I paced between the front window and the sliding glass door. Watching our guests gradually notice that something was wrong. Our neighbors and friends kept glancing toward the house, clearly wondering why the hosts had disappeared from their own party. Marcus's phone rang and I watched his face change as he listened to whoever was on the other end of the call. His jaw tightened and his free hand clenched into a fist at his side. "Where?" he asked, his voice deadly quiet. "How long?" He ended the call and turned to me, his expression grim. "Officer Rodriguez found Carmen's car in the parking lot of Miller's hardware store. She's inside shopping, acting like nothing's wrong. Sophia's not with her." The world tilted sideways. Carmen was in town, shopping for hardware supplies while our daughter was missing. The casual cruelty of it, the deliberate nature of what she was doing, hit me like a physical blow. "Where is Sophia?" I whispered. Marcus was already grabbing his keys and radio, his police chief training taking over, as he prepared to handle what was no longer a family misunderstanding but a potential crime in progress. "Officer Rodriguez is detaining Carmen for questioning. I'm going there now. You stay here and—" His words were cut off by the sound of a car door slamming in our driveway. We both rushed to the front window, hoping to see Carmen returning with Sophia, ready with some explanation for the terrifying 30 minutes we had just experienced. Instead, we saw Officer Jennifer Walsh, one of Marcus's newer recruits, walking rapidly toward our front door with an expression that made my stomach drop. She wasn't bringing good news. Marcus opened the door before she could knock, and Officer Walsh's first words confirmed our worst fears. "Chief, we found the baby." The way she said it, the carefully neutral tone that cops use when delivering devastating news, told me everything I needed to know before she spoke another word. "She's in Carmen's car. The car's been sitting in the sun for at least 40 minutes. Engine off, windows up, doors locked. The baby's unconscious." The ride to Miller's hardware store took 3 minutes that felt like a lifetime. Marcus drove with the controlled precision of someone who had responded to countless emergencies, but I could see his knuckles white against the steering wheel and the muscle in his jaw working as he fought to maintain professional composure. I sat in the passenger seat of his police cruiser, my hands pressed against my pregnant belly, trying to process the reality that my sister had deliberately left my daughter to die in a locked car while she went shopping. Officer Walsh had radioed ahead that the EMTs were already on scene, working to cool Sophia's body temperature and establish IV access for emergency hydration. The volunteer fire department had used specialized tools to unlock Carmen's car without setting off the alarm system, and Sophia had been unconscious but breathing when they pulled her from the vehicle. The internal temperature of the car had reached 132 degrees. As we pulled into the hardware store parking lot, I could see the chaos Marcus's officers had contained into an organized emergency response. Carmen's silver Honda was surrounded by police vehicles, an ambulance, and the fire department's rescue truck. Yellow tape marked off a perimeter around the scene, and Officer Rodriguez was documenting everything with his camera, while EMT supervisor Janet Miller worked over a small figure on a stretcher beside the ambulance. I was out of the police cruiser before Marcus had fully stopped, running toward the ambulance despite his shouted order to wait. Nothing mattered except getting to Sophia, seeing with my own eyes that she was alive, that we weren't too late to save her. "Isabella, let them work," Janet said firmly as I approached the stretcher. She had been the head EMT in Millbrook for 15 years, and I had worked with her countless times during medical emergencies at the hospital. Her voice carried the authority of someone who knew how to manage panicked parents while providing life-saving care. Sophia looked impossibly small on the adult-sized stretcher, her dark hair damp with perspiration and her usual pink complexion a frightening shade of gray. She was wearing the yellow sundress I had put on her that morning, now soaked with sweat and clinging to her tiny body. Her eyes were closed, but I could see the rapid rise and fall of her chest and hear the soft whimper that meant she was fighting to consciousness. "Vitals are stabilizing," Janet reported to Marcus as he joined us beside the ambulance. "Core temperature was 106 when we got her out of the car, but we've got it down to 102. She's dehydrated and exhausted, but her airways are clear and her heart rate is strong. We need to get her to the hospital for full evaluation and continued cooling." I climbed into the ambulance beside Sophia's stretcher, taking her small hand in mine and feeling the relief of her fingers reflexively gripping mine in response. She was conscious enough to recognize my touch, aware enough to seek comfort. The pediatric nurse in me cataloged her symptoms, while the mother in me whispered prayers of gratitude that we had found her in time. "Mama?" Sophia's voice was barely a whisper, her eyes fluttering open to focus on my face with the confused expression of a child waking from a deep sleep. "I'm here, baby girl. Mama's here, and you're going to be okay." I kissed her forehead, tasting the salt of dried sweat and feeling the fever that was slowly breaking under Janet's expert care. Marcus rode in the front of the ambulance, coordinating with his officers via radio while we made the short trip to Millbrook General Hospital. I could hear fragments of his conversations with dispatch, orders to secure the scene at Miller's Hardware, instructions to begin interviewing witnesses, and most chillingly, authorization to arrest Carmen Valdez on charges of child endangerment and reckless endangerment. The emergency department team was waiting for us when we arrived, led by Dr. Patricia Reynolds, the hospital's chief of emergency medicine and one of the physicians I worked with regularly in the pediatric unit. She had activated the hospital's pediatric crisis protocol, calling in additional nursing staff and preparing the specialized equipment needed to treat severe heat exhaustion in young children. "Let's get her into Trauma Bay 2, Dr. Reynolds directed as we transferred Sophia from the ambulance stretcher to a hospital gurney. "I want continuous cardiac monitoring, temperature checks every 15 minutes, and blood work to assess electrolyte levels and kidney function." As the medical team took over Sophia's care, I stepped back to let them work, watching with professional appreciation as they implemented the same protocols I had helped develop during my 3 years at Millbrook General. The irony that my own daughter was now benefiting from systems I had created to protect other people's children wasn't lost on me. Marcus appeared at my side, his uniform shirt damp with perspiration from the stress and heat of the afternoon. "Officer Rodriguez is bringing Carmen in for questioning. She's demanding to know why she's being arrested, claiming she just ran into town for party supplies and forgot Sophia was sleeping in the car." The casualness of Carmen's explanation, the way she was already constructing a narrative that painted her as a victim of an innocent mistake, rather than someone who had deliberately endangered a child, made my vision blur with rage. But I forced myself to focus on the medical information Drive Reynolds was sharing about Sophia's condition and treatment plan. "Her blood work shows moderate dehydration but no signs of organ damage," Dr. Reynolds explained. "We're going to keep her overnight for observation and continued IV hydration, but all her vital signs are trending in the right direction. She's going to be fine, Isabella." The relief was overwhelming, but it was quickly replaced by a cold determination that surprised me with its intensity. Sophia was going to recover fully, but that didn't change what Carmen had done or the intent behind her actions. This wasn't a mistake or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was attempted murder disguised as carelessness. Marcus seemed to read my thoughts. "I need to go question Carmen myself," he said quietly. "She's waiving her right to an attorney and insisting she wants to explain what happened. Officer Rodriguez says she's acting confused about why everyone's so upset." "I want to be there," I said immediately. "Absolutely not. You're emotionally involved, and anything that happens in that interview room could affect the prosecution's case. Carmen knows exactly what she's doing by waiving her rights and requesting to speak with me directly. She's counting on family loyalty to protect her." But Marcus didn't understand that family loyalty had died the moment I saw Sophia unconscious on that stretcher. The sister I had spent 32 years trying to love and understand had revealed herself to be someone capable of using a child as a weapon in her war against my happiness. There would be no forgiveness, no family protection, no second chances. "Then record everything," I said, "every word, every expression, every lie she tells. I want documentation of exactly who Carmen really is." Dr. Reynolds interrupted our conversation to report that Sophia was asking for her favorite stuffed elephant and wondering when she could go home. The return of her normal personality and concerns was the best indicator that she would make a full recovery without lasting effects from her ordeal. "Can I see her now?" I asked. "Of course. She's been asking for you every few minutes. Just keep the visit calm and low-key. She doesn't understand what happened to her, and we want to keep it that way for now." I spent the next hour sitting beside Sophia's hospital bed, reading her favorite picture books and singing the lullabies that had comforted her since infancy. She was tired and clingy but otherwise seemed like herself, chattering about the fun party and asking when Aunt Carmen would visit her in the hospital. The innocence of her questions broke my heart. Sophia had no understanding that the aunt she loved and trusted had deliberately tried to harm her. In her 18-month-old mind, being left in the car was just something that happened, like getting a diaper change or taking a nap. She had no concept of the malice behind Carmen's actions. Meanwhile, I could hear activity in the hallway as Marcus's officers coordinated the investigation. Officer Walsh stopped by to update me on Carmen's arrest and transport to the county jail, where she would be held pending formal charges and a bail hearing. The district attorney had been contacted and was reviewing the case for potential felony charges beyond the initial misdemeanor citations. "She's still claiming it was an accident," Officer Walsh reported. "Says she intended to come right back to the car but got distracted by shopping and lost track of time. She's acting shocked that anyone would think she'd deliberately hurt Sophia." But the timeline didn't support Carmen's story. Security cameras at Miller's Hardware showed her browsing leisurely through the store, comparing prices on gardening supplies and chatting with other customers. She had spent 47 minutes inside while Sophia suffered in the locked car, and her shopping behavior showed no urgency or awareness that she had left a child behind. More damning was the evidence Marcus's officers had discovered in Carmen's apartment when they executed a search warrant. Her internet history showed weeks of research into car safety in hot weather, including specific searches about how quickly vehicles heat up and how long children can survive in extreme temperatures. Her cell phone contained deleted text messages to friends expressing resentment about my perfect life and her belief that I didn't deserve my happiness. As evening approached and Sophia finally fell asleep in her hospital bed, I sat in the darkened room processing the full scope of what Carmen had planned and nearly accomplished. This wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of poor judgment. This was a calculated attempt to destroy my family, planned and executed with the cold precision of someone who viewed my child as an acceptable casualty in her war against my success. The woman I had called sister for 32 years had revealed herself to be a stranger capable of unthinkable cruelty, and my husband, the police chief who had sworn to protect and serve, was about to make sure she faced every consequence the law allowed. The first phone call came at 6:30 in the morning, 3 days after Carmen's arrest. I was sitting in Sophia's hospital room, watching my daughter eat breakfast with the healthy appetite that confirmed her complete recovery, when my cell phone buzzed with my mother's number on the display. "Isabella, what have you done?" Maria's voice was shrill with panic and accusation. "Carmen called us from jail crying, saying you and Marcus had her arrested for some kind of misunderstanding. She says she just forgot Sophia was in the car for a few minutes, and now you're trying to send her to prison." I had been dreading this conversation since the moment Marcus's officers had placed Carmen in handcuffs, knowing that my parents would receive a carefully edited version of events, designed to position Carmen as the victim, and Marcus and me as vindictive relatives abusing our power in the community. "Mom, Carmen left Sophia locked in a car in 97-degree heat for 47 minutes while she went shopping," I said, keeping my voice calm despite the rage building in my chest. Sophia's core temperature was 106 degrees when the paramedics found her. She could have died. Carmen would never hurt Sophia. She loves that baby more than anything. Maria's voice carried the same protective denial I had heard countless times during our childhood, when Carmen's behavior crossed lines that should have had consequences. "There has to be some mistake." "There's no mistake, Mom. We have security footage of Carmen shopping for gardening supplies while Sophia was dying in her car. We have evidence that she researched how quickly cars heat up in summer weather. This wasn't an accident." The silence on the other end of the line stretched long enough that I wondered if my mother had hung up. When she finally spoke, her voice had taken on the cold, disappointed tone I remembered from every conversation where I had dared to criticize Carmen's behavior. I never thought I would see the day when one of my daughters would turn against the other like this. Carmen made a mistake, Isabella. A terrible mistake, but that's all it was. Family is supposed to forgive and support each other, not destroy each other with lawyers and police reports. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with my mother alternating between pleas for me to drop the charges and accusations that I was jealous of Carmen's relationship with Sophia. When I finally ended the call, my hands were shaking with frustration and grief for the family relationships that were dissolving as quickly as my trust in Carmen had shattered. The call from my father came an hour later, followed by calls from aunts, uncles, and cousins who had received Carmen's version of events. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Initial concern for Sophia's welfare, followed by suggestions that Marcus and I were overreacting, and finally accusations that we were using our positions in the community to punish Carmen for a simple mistake. By the third day, Carmen had been released on a $50,000 bond posted by our parents, who had mortgaged their house to raise the money. The local newspaper had picked up the story, running headlines about the police chief's sister-in-law being charged with child endangerment. The article was carefully neutral, reporting only the basic facts of the case, but the comments section became a battlefield between people who supported our family and those who believed Carmen's claims of innocence. Marcus threw himself into the investigation with the methodical thoroughness that had made him an effective police chief. He recused himself from direct involvement in Carmen's case to avoid any appearance of conflict of interest, but he coordinated with the district attorney's office to ensure every piece of evidence was properly documented and preserved for trial. The evidence against Carmen was overwhelming. In addition to the security footage and internet search history, investigators had found a notebook in her apartment containing detailed observations about our family routines, Sophia's schedule, and the layout of our house. She had written notes about the best times to create emergencies that would require my attention, strategies for positioning herself as indispensable to our family, and calculations about how long children could survive in extreme heat. Most chilling was a series of journal entries dating back to Sophia's birth, expressing Carmen's resentment about the attention Sophia received, and her belief that my daughter was stealing the family love that should have belonged to Carmen. The entries revealed a level of narcissistic rage and entitlement that made her actions seem less like sibling rivalry and more like the calculated behavior of someone with serious psychological disorders. Dr. Sarah Chen, the forensic psychologist who evaluated Carmen for the court, diagnosed her with narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial features. In her report, Dr. Chen explained that Carmen's behavior followed a classic pattern of someone who viewed other people as objects to be manipulated, rather than individuals deserving of empathy and consideration. Ms. Valdez demonstrates a profound inability to understand or care about the impact of her actions on others, Dr. Chen wrote. Her primary concern throughout this evaluation has been how her arrest affects her reputation and future plans, with no genuine remorse for endangering the child or understanding of why her behavior was harmful. The psychological evaluation became a turning point in my understanding of Carmen's behavior throughout our lives. The childhood tantrums, the dramatic disappearances, the constant need to upstage my achievements, the way she had inserted herself into my relationship with Marcus. All of it fit the pattern Dr. Chen described of someone who viewed family relationships as competitions to be won rather than bonds to be nurtured. Meanwhile, our community rallied around our family in ways that surprised and touched me. The parents of children I had treated at the hospital organized meal trains and childcare support. Marcus's officers took turns providing extra security around our house after we received anonymous threatening messages from people who believed Carmen's version of events. The church we attended held special prayer services for Sophia's continued recovery and our family's healing. The gender reveal party decorations that Carmen had spent weeks planning remained in our backyard for days after her arrest. The blue streamers and congratulatory signs creating a surreal contrast to the police tape and evidence markers that had temporarily transformed our home into a crime scene. Finally, our neighbor Mrs. Patterson quietly cleaned everything up, boxing the decorations and storing them in our garage where they would remain untouched for months. Sophia showed no lasting physical effects from her ordeal, but the emotional impact became apparent in subtle ways. She became clingy and anxious when separated from Marcus or me, even for brief periods. She stopped asking about Aunt Carmen after the first week, as if some part of her young mind understood that Carmen was no longer safe. The pediatric therapist we consulted assured us that 18-month-old children typically don't retain traumatic memories in ways that cause long-term psychological damage, but recommended strategies for helping Sophia feel secure and protected. The pregnancy with our son continued without complications, though the stress of the legal proceedings and family conflicts required careful monitoring from my obstetrician. Dr. Williams prescribed modified bed rest during the final month, partly due to elevated blood pressure caused by the ongoing stress of preparing for Carmen's trial. Lucas was born on a snowy December morning, 6 weeks after Carmen's trial had concluded with her conviction on felony charges of child endangerment and reckless endangerment. The delivery was smooth and uncomplicated, attended by the same team of nurses and doctors who had celebrated Sophia's birth 3 years earlier. This time, the only family members in the waiting room were Marcus's parents, who had driven up from Texas to meet their new grandson. My parents had cut off contact with us completely after Carmen's sentencing, choosing to believe her claims of innocence despite the overwhelming evidence presented at trial. They blamed Marcus and me for destroying their family, refusing to acknowledge that Carmen's choices had created the situation that led to her imprisonment. The isolation from my extended family was painful but also liberating. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't have to navigate around Carmen's emotional explosions or manage my parents' enabling behavior. Our holidays became peaceful celebrations focused on our immediate family and the friends who had chosen to support us through the crisis. Marcus and I attended couples therapy throughout the first year after Carmen's arrest, working through the trauma of nearly losing Sophia and the complex grief of losing most of my family of origin. The therapist helped us understand that protecting our children sometimes required cutting ties with people who posed threats to their safety, even when those people were blood relatives. Our sessions also addressed the guilt I carried about trusting Carmen with Sophia despite the warning signs I had rationalized away over the years. The therapist reminded me that normal people don't expect their family members to be capable of attempted murder, and that my willingness to give Carmen chances to prove herself was evidence of my capacity for love and forgiveness, not naivety or poor judgment. As Lucas grew from infant to toddler, I found myself comparing his development to Sophia's milestones, grateful for the opportunity to experience the joy of parenthood without the constant undercurrent of drama that had characterized Sophia's early years. We established new traditions and routines that reflected our values rather than accommodating Carmen's need for attention and control. The house that had once felt contaminated by Carmen's betrayal gradually became a true home again, filled with the laughter of children who were safe and protected by parents who put their welfare above all other considerations. 3 years have passed since that August afternoon when my world shattered and rebuilt itself in the span of a few terrifying hours. As I sit in my kitchen this morning watching Sophia teach her 4-year-old brother Lucas how to make pancakes while Marcus reads case files at the breakfast table, I'm struck by how normal our life has become. The trauma that once consumed our daily existence has faded into something we carry but no longer defines us. Sophia is now 4.5, a confident preschooler who loves dinosaurs, finger painting, and helping me care for the pediatric patients who still light up when they see her in the hospital hallways. She has no conscious memory of that day in Carmen's car, though she still prefers to stay close to Marcus or me in parking lots and becomes anxious if left alone in vehicles even for brief moments. Her pediatric therapist assures us these are normal protective responses rather than signs of lasting psychological damage. Lucas, meanwhile, has grown into a chatty 2-year-old who inherited Marcus's steady temperament and my stubborn determination. He adores his big sister and follows her around our house like a devoted puppy, mimicking her words and copying her actions with the single-minded focus that only toddlers possess. Watching them play together, I'm grateful that Lucas will grow up in a home free from the toxic dynamics that shaped my own childhood. Carmen served 18 months in the Colorado Women's Correctional Facility before being released on parole with strict conditions that include mandatory psychological counseling and a restraining order preventing any contact with our family. According to the sparse information that reaches us through mutual acquaintances, she has moved to Arizona and works at a call center under her maiden name. She maintains her innocence in online forums and social media posts, painting herself as a victim of a vindictive police chief who used his power to destroy her life over an honest mistake. The restraining order expires next year, but Marcus and I have already consulted with our attorney about extending it indefinitely. Carmen's lack of genuine remorse and her continued efforts to portray herself as wrongfully convicted suggest that she remains a potential threat to our family's safety. The forensic psychologist's evaluation warned that individuals with Carmen's psychological profile rarely change without intensive treatment, and all evidence suggests she has used her time in prison to refine her victim narrative rather than address her underlying issues. My parents have maintained their unwavering support for Carmen throughout her incarceration and continue to blame Marcus and me for destroying their family. They send birthday cards to Sophia and Lucas through our attorney, always including messages about how much they miss their grandchildren and how sorry they are that misunderstandings have kept the family apart. These communications are carefully preserved as evidence of their ongoing refusal to acknowledge the reality of Carmen's actions. The most painful aspect of losing my parents hasn't been the absence of their support, but rather the realization that their love was always conditional on my willingness to enable Carmen's behavior. In therapy, I've come to understand that my role in the family system was to be the responsible child who cleaned up Carmen's messes and absorbed the consequences of her actions. By refusing to continue that pattern, by choosing to protect my children instead of protecting Carmen from accountability, I violated the unspoken contract that had governed our family relationships for decades. Marcus has thrived in his role as police chief, implementing community policing programs that have significantly reduced crime rates in Millbrook, while building trust between law enforcement and the residents we serve. His handling of Carmen's case, despite the personal cost, earned respect from his officers and the broader community. The district attorney credited his professional approach and thorough investigation with securing Carmen's conviction and preventing what could have been a successful defense based on claims of family bias. The experience also deepened Marcus's commitment to protecting children from abuse and neglect. He has established specialized training programs for his officers on recognizing signs of child endangerment and has worked with social services to create faster response protocols for cases involving minors. In a strange way, Carmen's attempt to destroy our family has led to improved protection for other children in our community. My career has evolved as well. I've completed additional training in pediatric trauma and now serve as the hospital's coordinator for child protection cases. Working with families navigating abuse investigations and custody disputes has given me perspective on how common it is for people to choose loyalty to abusers over protection of victims. I've learned that the decision Marcus and I made to prioritize Sophia's safety over family harmony was actually quite rare, and that many children continue to suffer because relatives are unwilling to hold loved ones accountable for harmful behavior. The hospital has also benefited from protocols and equipment funded by grants I've written specifically to improve emergency response to pediatric heat-related injuries. The cooling systems and specialized monitoring equipment we purchased after Sophia's case have been used dozens of times to treat children suffering from heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Each time I see these resources save a child's life, I'm reminded that something positive emerged from our family's tragedy. The friends we've made in Millbrook have become our chosen family, providing the support and unconditional love that my biological relatives were unable or unwilling to offer. Our neighbors include 2 other police families who understand the unique pressures of law enforcement careers: a pediatric surgeon who shares my passion for child advocacy, and a retired teacher who has become the grandmother figure Sophia and Lucas deserve. These relationships have taught me that family is defined by love, loyalty, and mutual support rather than shared DNA. The people who show up during crises, who celebrate your successes without resentment, who put children's welfare above adult convenience, these are the people who truly matter. Blood relationships that require you to accept abuse or enable harmful behavior aren't worth preserving. Sophia and Lucas will grow up understanding that love requires respect, and that family members who pose threats to their safety don't deserve access to their lives. They'll learn to trust their instincts about people's behavior and to speak up when something feels wrong. Most importantly, they'll know that Marcus and I will always choose their protection over any other relationship or obligation. The gender reveal party that was supposed to celebrate Lucas's upcoming arrival became instead a turning point that saved Sophia's life and exposed Carmen's true nature. The blue confetti that scattered across our deck that day has long since been swept away, but the clarity it brought to our family dynamics remains. Sometimes the most beautiful celebrations become the backdrop for the most important revelations. When people ask how I've forgiven Carmen for what she did, I explain that forgiveness and accountability aren't mutually exclusive. I've forgiven Carmen in the sense that I no longer carry anger or resentment toward her, but forgiveness doesn't require me to pretend her actions weren't dangerous or to expose my children to future harm. True forgiveness sometimes means accepting that someone has shown you who they really are, and responding appropriately to protect yourself and those you love. The restraining order, the ongoing no-contact policy, and our vigilance about Sophia and Lucas's safety aren't evidence of unforgiveness. They're evidence of wisdom gained through painful experience. Carmen had decades of opportunities to change her behavior, to develop empathy, to choose love over competition. She chose instead to view my children as weapons in her war against my happiness. As I watch Sophia help Lucas flip his first successful pancake this morning, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude for the life we've built, from the ashes of that terrible August day. Our home is filled with laughter instead of drama, support instead of competition, and genuine love instead of conditional approval. The family we've created and chosen is everything I dreamed of but never thought possible during those years of walking on eggshells around Carmen's emotional volatility. If you're listening to this story and recognizing patterns from your own family relationships, please know that it's okay to choose safety over loyalty, protection over peacekeeping, and your children's welfare over adult feelings. Family members who truly love you will support your efforts to create healthy boundaries. Those who fight against reasonable limits are showing you their priorities. Trust your instincts when someone's behavior doesn't match their words. Document concerning incidents. Seek professional help when family dynamics feel unhealthy or unsafe. And remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's harmful behavior, even when that person is family. The greatest gift we can give our children is the knowledge that they deserve to be treated with respect and kindness, and that no relationship, no matter how biological or historical, is worth compromising their safety or well-being. Love doesn't require you to accept abuse, and family doesn't mean tolerating threats to your children's lives. Our story could have ended in tragedy, but instead it became a testimony to the power of choosing protection over politeness, accountability over enabling, and chosen family over biological obligation. Sometimes losing the family you were born into is the only way to create the family your children deserve to have. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.